Tony Sham. There are two things that really interest me, marketing and education. And every now and then I get this nice opportunity to put the two together. I'm a marketing person to the core. I describe myself as a marketing enthusiast, and that indeed is what I am. My career in marketing began way back. There's a particular date that I can put it back to, but it's going to date me. But in Jan 1979, I joined a marketing research house called AC Nielsen, who were at the time and probably still are one of the big marketing research companies in the world. And I just absolutely loved the environment, and I've been all about marketing ever since. At Nielsen, we were measuring the what, the when, the how, the where, but we were always intrigued by the question of why, and that remains to this day. At Nielsen, we researched the FMCG market, and I must tell you, it's been quite a number of years that have passed since. Some wives, if they take their husbands with, the husbands get bored in the retail store, but I still find it fascinating. And sometimes my wife actually has to pull me out of the retail store saying, okay, now we have to, time has come, we've got to go home. Education, I love learning. I think that we're so fortunate to be active in an age where there is so many opportunities around us for education. The nature of education has changed. The days when you went to school and then to university and your education was complete are long gone, and education is an ongoing process. So with that, I want to bring the two together and talk about something that's very close to my heart, the state of email marketing in South Africa. Now, I have to tell you that I've very carefully said in South Africa, because the idea is for a state of email marketing report is not my own. There are two organizations that I follow, two international organizations that I follow very closely. They are Validity and Pinpoint, and I really got a hold of this idea from both these organizations, who are worldwide, and share an enthusiasm with me for email marketing. And the first question that I always pose is, where's email marketing? Is it, where do we stand in South Africa in Feb and in June, same place? Is it a relic of the past, dealt a death blow by the Poppy Act? Yes, some questions that we're going to look at. Is it no longer a viable option for marketing right now? Or is it, and has it been and still is, one of the most responsive mediums for marketing right now? Those are the many people, if you sit in my seat, there are many people who think that email marketing is redundant, it's gone, and they would think of some of these reasons as to why it's the case. So what do we find? Well, let's address these one at a time. POPIA, Protection of Personal Information Act, has in fact been with us for 5 years. It's not a new thing. There's a special section of POPI which relates to the marketing industry. And so Although this came into effect 5 years ago, there were various delays in implementing it. And last year, at the end of July, we were told that all the delays on Poppy for marketing have expired, and Poppy is in effect. The difficulty with knowing exactly how Poppy pans out in the marketing space is that the legislation is not written in rules, but it's written in principles. And because it's in principles, it's subject to interpretation. Who's going to do the interpretation? Well, there's a regulator in the Poppy office. And the lady who is the regulator is no lightweight. She was the CEO of the National Electoral Commission for many years. But this has caused us a problem because the regulator has been in place for, I would say, about 3 years, yet has never regulated. So there's a bit of a gray area here as to exactly what constitutes Poppy compliance or not. And there are there's some differing opinions. But what has practical experience taught us? Well, you have to get a Poppy, if you're using external data, you have to work with a Poppy compliant database. And just so that you know where I'm coming from, I'm a database provider. I want to just declare that that's my livelihood. I'm active in the world of direct marketing, of marketing strategy, and of email marketing, which goes into many of those. So, but I'm not trying to I promise you, I'm not trying to sell anything today, but there's many hoops that one has to jump through to make sure that your database is Poppy compliant. Our legal expert, John Giles, of the firm of attorneys Mickelson's in Durban, is probably the most knowledgeable legal mind on this little section that affects marketing of Poppy. Poppy, as it affects your bank, your doctor, your hospital, is crystal clear. Poppy, as it affects marketing, is a different branch of Poppy, and it's subject to some interpretation. However, John thinks that our operation is Poppy compliant. We'll only know with absolute certainty when the regulator finally regulates, but until then, that's what we think, that we are Poppy compliant. The second thing, how viable is email marketing? I follow the group called Validity, and they produce an annual state of marketing report. And when I send you the details of the recording and that we have after this presentation, I will also give you the links to those reports. They are there for everybody to see. The 2022 report has just been published. And here's the key finding that they found. They asked people, how effective is your email marketing? Has your email marketing been in up to February 2022? 8% of the respondents said that effectiveness is improving significantly. 30% said that significance is improving slightly. 39% have said that effectiveness is holding steady. I just want to go back here. That's based on their experience, and they've had privacy legislation that is much more severe than what we have, and much more wide-reaching. And in that environment, which covers mostly America and Europe, a combination of 77% of people have said that email effectiveness is either steady or going forward. 14% have said that effectiveness is declining slightly, and 9% said it's declining significantly. So this is based on the international experience. And I'll give you the details. And if you're interested in email marketing, then I strongly recommend that you subscribe to both Validity and Pinpoint, just to get an international perspective on our medium and what's happening to it. They raise issues. There are issues for email marketing. The first of these is a thing called deliverability. It's known that you are getting less and less able to effectively deliver 100% of your email every time you send. That's nothing new. Email vetting services have been around for some time, and sometimes you're going to send mail, and for whatever reason, it's not going to arrive at destination. That's not a problem that's unique to South Africa. That is international. But we work very hard, and there are remedies that are in place to make sure that this number of undeliverables is as low as possible. The second issue that they raise is that of what they call list hygiene, clean data. There's a number of terms. How up to date is your mailing list? Because the level of updates of your mailing list has impact on the first item, deliverability. Obviously, if you've got a list that has old and redundant information, those email addresses that you may be using are not working anymore. You're going to get a bounce from that. However, the implications are a bit more than that, because there are many tracking devices that that people have put in, that companies have put in place to track who are valid, who are legitimate email senders, and who are, and the Lord knows, there were many, and still are many spammers out there. And so you better make sure that your list is pretty clean. Now I'm going to spend quite a bit of time on this thing in a few minutes, because it's come up again and again and again and again. Some of the issues that they raise, and this is just what I get from their report, subject line optimization. So they spend a lot of time discussing what should go into the subject line. And the theory is that when somebody gets an email, the subject line is the first thing that the person sees. And so it better be good. Because the reality is, when you use this medium, our main enemy is not deliverability, as much as we try and maximize deliverability. It's content. Why? Somebody looks at your mail, and the research says that you have seven seconds. And within 7 seconds, they're either going to do one of two things. They're going to delete your mail, or they're going to read it further. Think of your own practice when you go to the inbox in the morning. How many seconds do you give that incoming mail before you do hit the delete button? Well, you better engage with the person. And you've got to craft something that's quite delicate, because you have to blend something that's interesting with something that's relevant. You've got to spell out what it's about, but you've got to do it in a way that's interesting. So they spend a lot of time on this one thing. As the technology continues to develop, deliverability used to be 10 years ago, 15 years ago, about being declared spam. You send somebody a mail, they'd have a tracking system, and some of these systems would actually read your message and declare it to be spam. Well, I have to tell you that that's a relic of the past. Spam bounces, while they're not completely out of the picture, are at a minimum. They just don't happen anywhere near as much as they used to be. Getting bounced for being a spam email is much, much lower than what it's ever been. However, what's much more prominent now than what might have been before is being blocked. I don't like where this mail is coming from, I'll block it. And so your low deliverability is much more likely to be your mail being blocked rather than being declared spam. However, once again, there are some remedies that have been given to us. One of these that's pretty hot topic in the email world is that of Bummy, B-I-M-I. And Bummy is an acronym for Brand Indicators for Message Identification. And essentially, what your email service provider, or if you're your own service provider, what you can do is have your mail server declared Bummy compliant. And when you get that, it says, or the implications are that you've jumped through the hoops and that you're a valid service provider. And in fact, it gives you the ability to put a logo on your incoming email address. The logo is not a big one, it's a tiny thing, but you might have seen, for example, if you get any mail from Gmail, you get a big green G. That's their Bummy logo. So obviously, and I've no doubt if you're using MailChimp or one of these email service providers, they have their Bummy. They have spent a lot of time and effort getting their service Bummy compliant or Bummy identified. They raise a lot of issues about A/B testing. This is one of the hot topics. Because as much as we can look at marketing theory, and I can tell you what I think constitutes a good email and what doesn't make an email maybe so good, is subjective. It may or it may not be. The only way that you're going to find out at the end of the day is by testing. Testing this approach versus that approach. So there's a lot there around we usually refer to it as A/B testing. A/B testing is when you take testing and you test two options. I'm actually a trained statistician. You can have many options, but sometimes it gets too complicated unless you're working with two at a time. But there are ways of maybe testing more than two simultaneously. And Validity give a free handout, Fundamentals of Email Marketing. It's an ebook download, and I refer to it. It's a bit technical and cumbersome to read from cover to cover, but I go to it when I'm in need of some information. What are the advantages of email marketing? What makes email marketing good if you think it's good? Well, the most important thing, especially if you're in business to business. I was very fortunate enough last year to attend a training course held by Seth Godin's Institute. It was called the Marketing Seminar. And it ran for 66 weeks. Fantastic, absolutely mind-bending. And it wasn't all about Seth Godin, but a lot of it was. And Seth says something which has stayed with me. He said, which medium should you use? Where does your target market hang out? If they hang out in a particular place, that's where you should go. Well, certainly if you're in business to business? Does your target market hang out in social media? Do they hang out in Facebook? Do they hang out in some of the other, in Twitter? I don't think so. I think that many people like me have a Facebook account, have a Twitter account, but do we go there looking for business services? No, I'll go there to find out what's happening in the world among my friends. Where do I hang out when I'm in business mode? At my desk. Where do I get my emails when I'm in that mode? Mainly on my desktop. Yes, I understand that people are getting more and more emails on their handheld devices, but where's their mental mode when they're looking at the email? They're expecting business-related services. So that, to my mind, is the main advantage for email marketing. It's great for A/B testing. Why? You can create two versions of your mailer and send one to group A and send another to group B and measure the difference. And then you have some empirical data, some hard and fast data about what's working and what's not working. Certainly, there's one place where email cannot be compared. It's in a class of its own. It's so prominent that even the social networks use email to keep in touch with the people who already know you. So here, there's two streams of email marketing. What we call cold, going to people who don't know you, trying to bring them in, and warm, people who already know you. Don't find an email intrusive at all, and it's highly effective. So, and there's not been another medium which has come around close to comparing it. What are the problems with email marketing? And let's be realistic here. There are many. One, some of the metrics that are used to measure the effectiveness of email marketing are broken. Typically, we look at read rates, we look at open rates. Sometimes we look at click-through rates to measure how effective our marketing is. And these are being disrupted by email security systems. It's not new in our world, but in some places it's new, mainly because Apple have changed their security environment. So when you send an email to somebody who is reading the email on an Apple device, then the security that's with the operating system automatically opens your email and clicks all the links, which nominally says that those have been opened and been read. And suddenly read rates are rocketing, but it's not being read by the person, it's being read by the security system. I sometimes say that the most effective measurement is the response rate. Whatever response you're hoping to get out of your email, did you get that? That really, at the end of the day, read rates, open rates, click-throughs are nice to know, but they're not the bottom line. Your mail being blocked, we've spoken about a bit. Low response rates. Low response rates are have been with us. I've been involved in email marketing from inception. From the very first time that email was used commercially, we were doing email marketing. And we were getting, in the early days, phenomenal response rates. It was just quite unbelievable when we look back, and that's declined. However, I want to come back to low response rates because that's changing. What about in South Africa? That's the international perspective. Well, here's my experience. We are getting some of the best response rates to email marketing that we've had for many years. Not quite back to the early 2000s, but quite a bit up on where they were 2 years ago and 3 years ago. I think Poppy might have done us a favor. It might have cleared some of the clutter. Some of the email security systems that are available are blocking the true spammers. You've won a lottery. We have somebody's left money in your name, etc. I mean, we know these things. Phishing attacks. And so here's the thing. When you send somebody a message and they connect with it, we're having some of the best response rates that we've had for quite a while. But some of the clutter has been removed. I think that's one of the factors. One of the downsides of being an email marketer in South Africa is that you do get people who don't know Poppy, don't understand Poppy. What you're doing is in contravention of Poppy, and I'm going to take it further, whatever. I'm afraid I actually just 2 hours ago spent about 10 minutes explaining why his understanding of, to a CEO of a medium-sized company who was breathing fire, why the technicalities of the Poppy Act. It goes with the territory. If you can't take the heat, don't go into the kitchen. I think anyway. Using, this might be the most important thing I would say, using effective strategies for email marketing is sacrosanct. I make it my business to receive emails. I must get the best part of 500 emails every day. I never tell people to stop sending. I put my name on mailing lists because I want to see what comes out of the system. And there's some people that are just absolutely wasting it, and there's a small minority who are using the medium most effectively. So you've got to have your strategy lined up. What is effective strategy? Well, the first thing is that you need to understand that email is based on wordings. Yes, you can have fancy pictures, you can have graphics, but at the end of the day, people are reading the words. And if you're not engaging with your copy, you're going nowhere. I don't care how fancy your email looks and how pretty it does. Some of the best response rates that we've had in recent times have been to plain text emails. Not always, but in many cases. You have to tap into something that is relevant and is interesting to the reader. Let me give you my gripe about email marketing in South Africa. 90% of the email marketing that I get, and 90% of the marketing that I see, not only on email, but on websites, on social media, are people bragging about, or companies bragging about how great they are. Yes, you think you're the best, whatever, around. You think you're the best engineering company, so do all the other engineering companies. You think you've got the best IT products, so do all the other IT distributors. What does your product do for me that makes my life better? Why is it relevant to me? And what is interesting about it to me? That's the key. You only get those 7 seconds. Use them wisely. In my book, the subject line and maybe the first and maybe the second line of the body are the most important things. Because that's where you're going to get your 7 seconds. And at the end of 6, you're going to get the delete button, or you're going to get somebody reading. Now, I'm not against long emails. In fact, if you get past the 7 seconds, people will read long emails. But if you don't engage with them right up front, you're going to lose it. What do I see when I look at emails? People use those first, we call it above the fold, those first 2 lines of the email to put pretty pictures, logos, etc. I'm sorry, you're absolutely wasting the precious real estate. And you're not going to get a response. In your copy, you've got to remember that people have very short attention spans. Here's the thing. No one reads a paragraph. You don't read a paragraph. When you get an email and it's got a paragraph, you say, that's too much for me to absorb, and you just skip right past it. You've got to break up those paragraphs. You've got to put it, people will read point 4, because I can go through a list of 5 things, quickly scan through it. But if you give me a paragraph and I've got to read, it's not going to happen. So some of these bulky and clunky emails have got a lot of text, expecting it's going to take somebody 2 or 3 minutes to read the whole thing and make sense of it. You're not going to get that time. Elaborate graphic design and banners do nothing in this medium. Put your fancy banners and your clever GIFs and put it on your website, put it on your social media, leave it out of your email. Oh, I have some clients who are married to their graphics and have a hard time accepting that one. The second thing that I'm going to tell you that I consider to be important in the medium of email marketing, and maybe in all marketing, don't ask for too much too soon. When I first came into direct marketing, there were 1 of 2 response states. 1, somebody bought what you offered, or somebody didn't buy. In fact, we used to have elaborate response statistical models that were based on, did the person buy or didn't they buy? Those were the only 2 states that we knew. However, in this day and age, I might not be ready to buy. I usually am not ready to buy, but I'm interested. I want to find out more about you. Don't expect me to, well, one of my mentors, I've taken over this phrase from him. Don't ask for a kiss on the first date. Be gentle. Understand where that person's at. Maybe the best you could ask for is to hold a conversation that lasts a few seconds, so that the other person on the other side can find you interesting, and maybe you can get a chance to chat a bit more later. Don't expect them to take up your offer immediately. You've got to understand that you're taking the prospect through a process or a journey, and that the email message that they get, if it's a cold email, that the best you can hope for is their attention span, their interest. Make that first step pretty light, so that somebody doesn't feel, well, if I click or if I say yes, I'm going to bite off more than I can chew. Because if they feel that, they're simply going to hit the delete button. The other thing that you need to understand is how you craft your messaging depend on what another one of my go-to websites refer to as either first party or third party data. Essentially, it's a very fancy term. First party is your own data. Third party is data that you might hire from a service like ours. And when you use external data, the purpose of the external data is to try and get people who are third party to become first party, to get them on your own mailing list. When you're writing to the people who already know you, you can be a bit more intimate with them. You can go into a little bit more detail. When you're writing to people who don't know you, You have to watch so carefully for the 7-second rule. You've got to be interesting, relevant in a very short space of time. Cold and we could refer to those as cold and warm marketing. Make sure your message is relevant to the target audience. So it should go without saying. But the enemy of making sure your message is relevant is so much marketing. We'll want to go there and tell the prospect how great you are at whatever you do. And really, every time I see that, I say, well, that's fantastic. You and everybody else are great. Here's the thing I'm absolutely sure of. When you send somebody a message and they perceive it to be relevant to their life, to their thinking, to their way of doing business, they will respond. In fact, I'm going to stick my neck out and say that relevance is more important than privacy. Sometimes even the people who are a bit touchy about privacy let relevance override privacy and will respond to a mail because they think that there's some benefit. There's something of value to reading the email or responding to it. Select the target market carefully. We're looking for people with a particular mindset. When I first came into direct marketing, target markets were very clear. If you were in a consumer goods, you'd be talking about LSM, living standards measure. You'd be talking about demographics, age group, life stage, etc. In business, we were even more precise. We said, well, this type of person in that type of industry, in companies of this particular size, but that may not be as relevant as it used. Not it may not be, is not as relevant as it used to be. Why? Because almost always you're aiming at somebody who has a particular mindset or worldview. And that could be somebody who's in your demographic group, but it could just as well be somebody who's outside of your demographic group. And it's difficult. We don't have this kind of information at hand. So one has to always just bear that in mind. There are ways and means of connecting with people who have the right mindset for your product. So now I've got ahead of myself. I just want to see what the time is. I don't want to keep you. So I want to use the remaining 5 minutes that I have talking about something that's happening in the South African scene. I don't know if it's just us, if it's internationally like this. We keep a business database. I'm just telling you this to set the context for what I'm about to do. We have about 430,000 people on the database. We've pretty much got everybody who's economically active at a fairly senior level. And we are pretty good at keeping the database up to date. Here's what we found. In May 2022, the month that's just passed, we lost somewhere around 30,000 records. When I say lost, what am I talking about? That's just short of about 7% of our database. And it's lost because people have either their mail stopped working, they've moved jobs, they're just not where they were. And so what we're seeing is we're seeing churn on our data at a rate that we've never experienced before. Yes, we've always had people moving, we've always had people not working at the job that they were working at in the previous month, but it's ramped up. And it's been like that for pretty much, look, it started ramping up at the beginning of lockdown, but 22, we've just seen it ramp. What does it mean? It means that in a typical database, you're losing, or about a third of your data is irrelevant. It's the people, particularly if you're in business to business, those people are not where they were a year ago. Somewhere between 25% and a third. Now we are geared for this. We're able to find out, work with those large quantities and keep our database up to date. However, there are many clients with their own data and they don't have that luxury. And so they're working with data that's out of date. And particularly, Byron, this may be something that's relevant to you. People who use CRM systems are sitting using their CRM. I love CRM systems. They are just the thing. But there are people who are using data in CRM systems, and that data is out of date. On one of the recent Pinpoint, they had an executive from Salesforce. Salesforce, the world's premier CRM system. I'm sure yours is better by. And he said the problem that they have is old data aging. So maybe it's not just a South African problem. And here are people making strategic decisions based on data which is just no longer relevant. One has to find ways and means of overcoming those problems. Some people think that you can give a database to the secretary and the secretary should bring the database up to date. It doesn't work like that. Obviously, from where I sit, I think you've got to bring it to a professional service provider who can do that. But I promise you, I'm not trying to. I did promise you at the beginning, I'm not trying to sell anything. I lied a little bit. So that's the world of email marketing. So people, I'd love to take your questions, but I want to be fair to everybody. I've used up the 45 minutes. What I am going to do is I'm going to write to you as soon as the details of the recording becomes available. I'm going to give you links to the resources that I found useful. You can use them. I'm going to give you an opportunity to fire questions at me. And then what I'm going to do, and I'll do this every time I do this presentation, I've got 5 one-hour slots available, which if you're among the first 5 people, you need to reply to my mail and show your interest just to discuss your situation with you. No strings attached. If it should lead to something, that's fantastic. But if not, maybe the voice of experience can just help you along your way. So please, you'll be welcome to take me up on one of those. What I am going to do is keep in touch with you. I believe that I have in 2 weeks' time, I'm launching an initiative, and I call it the Marketing Support Group. So essentially, what I'm going to do is it's going to be a webinar like this, but there'll only be presentation for about 10 minutes. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put people into groups and of about between 3 and 4, and let you bounce your ideas within that group. I don't know, maybe that works for some people, maybe it doesn't. I will be roving, so you can call on me if you need a tiebreaker or something like that. And I think it's about time that we've had, and it's not financial, there's no cost to this, it's just for the betterment of marketing. And so I'll let you know the details of that. My goal is to get people more educated in their marketing, but more curious, because, you know, when I was studying marketing, we could go to a textbook and it would tell us how to do marketing. That textbook's long gone. Now, the real feeder for how to do marketing is practical experience. So people, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. I hope you got value for the 45 minutes that you spent with me. Thank you. I appreciate what you've given up. I hope you got value, and I'm going to end the meeting now, and I hope that our paths are going to cross at some point in the future. So thanks very much, and goodbye.